He hadn't spoken since that night. Not to the press, not to investigators, beyond the required statements until now. The man who stood just a few feet from Charlie Kirk. The man whose job was to protect him finally decided to speak. And when he did, his voice didn't sound defensive. It sounded tired, like someone who had replayed a single moment 1,000 times and still couldn't change the ending. What do you think? Is the case moving forward carefully, or is progress being slowed by procedural delays? Share your thoughts in the comments below. That's where we hear your thought. Cues. We will definitely respond to all comment. And also make sure you comment where you're watching from to stay updated on every development. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications, and also don't hesitate to support this movement so you stay informed as new update becomes available. Started quietly, like most stories with clever cover-ups. No big headlines, no viral hashtags, just one name missing from the guest list and a new name appearing in corporate profiles. At first, no one noticed when Mason Reed, Charlie Kirk's personal security chief for 5 years, suddenly stopped showing up at turning point events. He was always the one standing in the background. Quiet crew cut, black suit, eyes scanning the crowd without ever lingering. The kind of guy you never notice until he's gone. And then last week he spoke. Not on television, not at a press conference, but on a tiny, previously unknown independent podcast. In just 24 hours, the clip had more than 20 million views and was shared across the political web. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I kept thinking about that night. The way he looked at me before the door closed, like he knew something I didn't." And in that moment, everything started in all sorts of scenarios. Politicians bursting into tears on live TV, influencers forging donation documents, and celebrities revealing scandals to stay in the spotlight. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared the internet for what Charlie Kirk's bodyguard just shared. Because this isn't a rumor. This is the account from the last person to see him alive. They say loyalty dies in darkness. But what happens when the person sworn to protect you starts questioning what he witnessed the night before the incident? Would you choose to stay silent and live in fear, or speak out and risk it all? The internet couldn't believe it, and neither would you, because as soon as he spoke, the entire story about Charlie and Erica Kirk that everyone thought they knew was turned upside down. One person wrote in the comments, "Look at every frame." And trust me, what's coming next is even more shocking. It started quietly, like most stories with clever cover-ups. No big headlines, no viral hashtags, just one name missing from the guest list and a new name appearing in corporate profiles. At first, no one noticed when Mason Reed, Charlie Kirk's personal security chief for 5 years, suddenly stopped showing up at turning point events. He was always the one standing in the background. Quiet, crew cut, black suit, eyes scanning the crowd without ever lingering. The kind of guy you never notice until he's gone. And then last week he spoke not on television, not at a press conference, but on a tiny, previously unknown independent podcast. In just 24 hours, the clip had more than 20 million views and was shared across the political web. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I kept thinking about that night, the way he looked at me before the door closed, like he knew something I didn't." And in that moment, everything started to change. Those who once believed Charlie Kirk's ordeal was a tragedy are now asking questions. Anna Rick Kirk, the widow who shared poignant Bible verses on Instagram. "Father, forgive them for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him," has suddenly gone completely silent. Mason says that the night before Charlie died, there was a private meeting at his Phoenix home. A meeting that was not part of any public schedule or document and was not allowed to be recorded. He was not invited, but as head of security, Mason noticed that things were unusual. He says 3 cars showed up just after midnight. One SUV with its license plate obscured, another with temporary plates from Virginia. Inside, Mason said, were 2 people he had met, a major donor with ties to Pusser and a political consultant who often appeared in federal files. They went straight to a private office. Erica told Mason to stand guard outside the door and not let anyone in. He obeyed, but he could still hear the tense conversation. The voice was low, compressed, and Charlie's voice gradually rose. The word donor was repeated, then the sound of chairs moving, and then complete silence. According to the mansion security log, at 1:47 a.m. Charlie walked out alone, his shirt unbuttoned, his face pale, and simply said, "Get some rest, Mason. Leave it to me." That was his final command. Immediately, social media went into an uproar. Some people thought Mason was just looking for attention. Others believed he might have been an unwilling witness. But then, real screenshots emerged, allegedly taken from the security company's cloud storage system. And from then on, the story was impossible to ignore. The timestamps matched, the logs matched, even the lighting in the driveway suggested an eerie coincidence. That's when our investigations team got access to a series of internal memos from the security company. Written just 3 days after Charlie Kirk's passing, the email was chillingly brief. Client terminated, no further reporting. Delete camera data. At first glance, it seemed like standard procedure. But things took a turn when it was discovered that the request had come not from Rick Kirk or his attorney, but from an untraceable VPN address in Washington, D.C. That's when the story turned from tragedy to chilling mystery. Soon, people who had worked with Charlie began reaching out directly. A former event manager sent us a voice memo saying that Charlie had been uneasy about having his phone tapped. He kept changing SIM cards, changing devices, and said that even at home, he felt like someone was watching him. Another source, an assistant who declined to be named for safety reasons, confirmed that in the final week before the incident, Charlie had a heated argument with a relative about a contract related to the family business. She wanted him to sign. He refused. "If I sign this," he said, "I will lose my soul." At the time, the assistant just laughed. She can't laugh anymore. Meanwhile, Erica Kirk's social media strategy changed dramatically. She deleted high-resolution wedding photos, turned off comments, and began posting vague quotes about the sacred moment, and the truth is about to come out. But what really sparked public outrage was a recent live stream where she accidentally read out a message, "Tell them the bodyguard is lying." The comments section exploded within minutes. People started spamming hashtags like "Who is she talking to?" and "Justice for Charlie." And just hours later, Mason Reed's podcast where he recounted the whole thing was taken down. The laptop was gone, the phone was gone, but the plants were still watered regularly. People were connecting the dots, seeing a familiar pattern. The same as the Tusa whistleblower who had mysteriously disappeared after speaking out about questionable donations a few months earlier. Coincidence? The internet didn't think so. And then a detail that couldn't be ignored. An audio recording posted on an anonymous Telegram account claiming to be Mason. The voice was distorted, but enough to make out one sentence. "If anything happens to me, check the cameras in the garage." We tried. We really tried. But when we contacted the security company to verify, they denied the existence of any cameras. Except we found the installation invoice. And on that invoice, there was a familiar signature, Erica Kirk's mother. And so, from a personal incident, the story suddenly turned into a real maze. That's when the story stopped being about loss and started being about power and the people who wield it. Because Mason was there the night before Charlie Kirk died. And what he witnessed that night still haunts him to this day. Mason says it wasn't just a debate. He heard names, dates, and numbers linked together in a way that went beyond any marriage or political movement. But what he didn't dare say was the most important piece of the puzzle. Who was on the other end of the call Erica received at 1:53 a.m. During the broadcast, Mason paused, his eyes averted from the camera, and then said something that blew up online. Let's just say it's someone who has never lost an election. That statement ignited a firestorm. Internet users immediately linked the events to powerful figures, campaign donors, and even international advisors. On Reddit, timeline analysis, private flight screenshots, and travel maps popped up like mushrooms after a rain. For the first time, major media outlets had to publicly address what they had once dismissed as online rumors. CNN aired a segment headlined, "Unverified claims about the Kirk incident are spreading like wildfire." Fox News called it a digital witch hunt. But behind the scenes, reporters from both sides were quietly texting, demanding a copy of the original recording. And that's when we knew this story had spiraled out of anyone's control. And that's when things got grimst. Because just before we could send any data, our internal email archive was compromised. Some files were corrupted beyond repair, and 2 major hard drives crashed overnight. Coincidence? Maybe. But after weeks of following the Charlie Kirk story, I no longer believe in coincidences. What happened that night at Charlie's house has never been made public. The only person who knew what really happened, the person who had been paid to keep quiet, has now disappeared without a trace. And then the unexpected happened. The next morning, silence reigned over the entire affair. The major media outlets remained silent, as if nothing had happened. Only fan accounts and a few independent blogs continued to follow until a 38-second clip appeared online titled "Garage Scene." The image was blurry like nighttime security footage, but it had a clear timestamp. 1:56 a.m. Cineas a.m. At the entrance to Charlie Kirk's home, a tall figure, supposedly Charlie, walked toward the garage. Behind him, a smaller, tense-looking figure followed closely. The timestamp matched exactly the time period Mason had mentioned. When Charlie turned around, the camera caught a faint glow coming from his phone, as if he were recording something. Within hours, the clip had gone viral. Viewers slowed the frame, zoomed in, added subtitles, trying to decipher every detail. One frame showed a faint reflection of a license plate, and cybersleuths traced it to a rental property registered under an alias linked to a financial advisory firm in Washington, D.C. Coincidence? Maybe, but with this story, nothing stays random forever. By noon, Erica Kirk had released an official statement through her publicist. Just 4 sentences carefully worded to the point of being cold. Our family asks for privacy while false rumors continue to circulate online. We remain focused on faith and healing. But the internet wasn't buying it. Faith and healing. People scoffed. You can't hashtag your way out of a scandal this bad. Soon after, they received a strange recording allegedly taken from a neighbor's outdoor microphone the same night the incident occurred. The audio was faint, but in the background, 2 voices could be heard. A sharp, clear male voice believed to be Charlie and a quieter, less distinct female voice. Then came a metallic sound like a door or car slamming shut. A Reddit user turned up the volume on the recording and swore he could hear. They already know. Was it Erica or someone in the meeting Mason mentioned? No one could verify, but the timeline matched perfectly, like the pieces of a puzzle fitting together. Then came the internal message leaks. An anonymous account called TP Inside Files began posting screenshots from internal group chats of Turning Point employees. One message purportedly from a mid-level coordinator read, "The boss made it clear about Mason. His scene is too much." Another message responded, "Delete the garage camera backup before HQ tells you to." Within minutes, the account was gone, but screenshots were saved, shared, and circulated under the hashtag #VaultLeak. Independent blogs began to explode with articles. Daily Scoop headline Turning Point Potential Crisis. A week ago, no one would have dared to post such a line. Now, every media outlet was clamoring for coverage. According to our own sources, Erica spent the afternoon on the phone with lawyers and sponsors trying to do damage control. One source even confirmed that she was asked to leave town temporarily to go to an undisclosed location in Montana. In other words, hide until the media storm passed. But things didn't settle down because that evening, a mysterious video link appeared in the inboxes of hundreds of reporters. The sender was listed as secure at Proton Mail with a brief but chilling subject line. You were right. Inside was a 2-minute audio file. The voice was shaky but clearly in the same tone as Mason Reed, who had appeared on the podcast. "I shouldn't say," the voice began. "But if they think deleting the camera is enough to protect her, they're wrong. There's another copy." Then Mason mentioned a backup drive stored where the hashtag Find the Drive trended for 72 hours straight. Meanwhile, we were quietly following the real trail. We discovered a billing record showing that 2 days after Charlie's death, a local locksmith had submitted a bill for opening a high-security residential door. The customer's name was obscured, but the payment went through GTK Industries, Erica Kirk's family business. If the backup drive really existed and was kept in the safe, it was likely gone before the authorities arrived. When confronted online, Erica lost her cool. In a post, which was later deleted, she wrote, "You guys are the ones who make a living off of other people's pain. Leave us alone." Just 5 minutes later, she deleted her entire personal account. That's when a new character emerged. Leah Porter, a former TFUSA scheduling assistant who was fired 2 weeks after Charlie left. In a live stream, Leah claimed that Mason had contacted her shortly before he disappeared. "He told me not to believe the official story," she said. "He said there was evidence that the meeting wasn't just about money. It was about control." Control of what? Leah didn't elaborate, but she revealed that Charlie had given her a spare envelope and told her that if anything unusual happened to send it. That envelope never arrived. Someone had stopped her in the middle of the road and the signatures in the postal logs didn't match. Leah's live stream comments exploded, half calling her brave, the other half calling her a storyteller. Moment. Charlie was mid-sentence. His voice calm, his tone steady, the next chaos. And yet, beneath the noise, he remembers one sound clearly. A chair scraping the floor, a phone dropping, someone whispering, "Get him out." He didn't even know who said it. He just followed instinct. The security officer says he's haunted. Not by what he didn't do, but by what he couldn't do. He'd swept that auditorium earlier that day. Checked the exits, the crowd, the camera angles. Everything seemed routine until it wasn't. And now, every headline, every post, every theory keeps pointing fingers at the one thing he can't undo. Being human. He told investigators, "There's no training for silence that loud." Because when the noise stopped, so did everything else. No one could process it. People froze, cried, prayed, recorded. He said he didn't even notice the cameras until hours later. And when the footage was already online, he said what hurt most was seeing the moment from 100 different angles, but none of them showing what it felt like to be there. In his statement, he never once blamed the system, the event organizers, or even himself directly. He just kept repeating one sentence. The same one his voice cracked on. "If I had seen his eyes sooner, maybe I could have stopped it." But here's the part no one talks about. There were signs, tiny, almost invisible ones. A backpack adjusted one too many times. A glance that lingered, a seat closer to the aisle than necessary. All the details that make sense only after it's too late. When asked if he forgave himself, he didn't answer right away. He just looked down and said softly, "I don't think this is about forgiveness. I think it's about accountability and how easily we forget the cost of it."